A shocking report on the serious drug problem inside Scotland's most notorious prison. ITV News has been given access to HMP Barlinnie and discovered supposedly secure phones issued to prisoners have been hacked, allowing them to be used to make drug deals.
Even the drug culture in jail's changed and people are punching people randomly for no reason. In my hall, you're talking 90% of the hall are taking some sort of drug.
Strategies to tackle addiction are being tried, but progress often wasted the moment prisoners leave jail.
Barlinnie is an old Victorian prison. The walls are designed to look oppressive. Life in here feels very stressful, even for me, and I know I'm getting out. When there's no realistic chance for prisoners to escape, they look for ways to escape even in their own mind, and that's where the drugs come in.
Also in News at 10 tonight. After much debate, the government approves the COVID vaccine for 12 to 15-year-olds, set to start next week.
The disruption in education that has happened has been extraordinarily difficult for children and had a big impact on health, mental health and long-term public health.
A crucial court hearing in New York. Prince Andrew's lawyer argues the case is baseless, non-viable and potentially unlawful.
There she is. Hello there. Love that smile.
From Bromley to the Big Apple, a new global superstar is born as Emma Raducanu effortlessly charms America.
They're my toughest critics and very, very hard to please, but yeah, I got them with this one. They couldn't resist.
And back to the future and on to the West End. Michael J. Fox tells Nina of his delight that the film finally made it from screen to stage.
When you do a film that's that big and it's that widely accepted, it's a whole different, your life takes a big change.
This is ITV News at 10 with Rageh Omaar.
Good evening. Try as politicians might, not every penny of taxpayers' money ends up being well spent. Tonight, ITV News can reveal that supposedly unhackable mobile phones given to prisoners in Scotland's biggest jail at a cost of £3 million were quickly hacked, allowing them to be used for dealing drugs and other crimes from behind bars. They were handed out to help inmates stay in contact with families when lockdown put paid to prison visits. Not only has this undermined some good work to break the link between drugs and crime inside Barlinnie jail, but it is actually fueling the problem in a prison where 80% of prisoners have been involved with drug or alcohol addiction.
Barlinnie, Scotland's biggest, oldest and toughest prison.
Coming back into jail now, it's scary. It's changed so much. It's like even the drug culture in jail's changed and people are punching people randomly for no reason. In my hall, you're talking 90% of the hall are taking some sort of drug.
Good afternoon, Peter. Welcome to Barlinnie. There's no mobile phones, and if you follow the rules as discussed, you'll be nice and safe.
ITV News has gone behind these walls into the cycle of addiction, crime and incarceration.
We're in a hall in Barlinnie. It's one of 5 halls. We commonly hold between 1,200 and 1,300 prisoners, but we're only designed for 987. Overcrowding is a real issue for us and Scotland, because Scotland is one of the highest incarceration rates in Western Europe.
What proportion of your prisoners here in Barlinnie are here because of or related to addiction to drugs?
It probably probably about 80%.
Barlinnie is an old Victorian prison. The walls are designed to look oppressive. Life in here feels very stressful, even for me, and I know I'm getting out. When there's no realistic chance for prisoners to escape, they look for ways to escape even in their own mind, and that's where the drugs come in.
The drugs here have been smuggled in through the soles of these training shoes.
And these are street Valium?
Street Valium.
We've been shown how the drugs are being smuggled in. The prison guard wants to remain anonymous.
We try every time we detect something, we stop it, something else, there's another system in
You with
play.
BBC News, time now for...
Now prisoners have been handed a new way of getting drugs in. During the pandemic, the Scottish Government gave every prisoner a mobile phone that was supposed to be tamper-proof. But ITV News has learned some phones have been hacked to conduct smuggling operations from inside the prison cell. How many phones do you reckon have been tampered with since they were issued?
I done a check of the phones, probably in one of the halls here in March time, and of the 300 prisoners that were there, there was probably about 100 phones tampered with altogether.
Once these deals are done, drugs have been simply thrown over the prison walls, but the means of smuggling drugs in is getting more complex. Letters are being soaked in drugs, then posted to the prison. This is the cat and mouse game. The criminals are trying to stay one step ahead, and the prison staff are trying to keep up. This is about reducing supply and demand, treating the addiction as a health issue. Prisoners like Mark have been offered a life skills class. He is a convicted murderer. He's serving life for stabbing a man to death while under the influence. In this recovery programme, he's now handed a blade and taught to cook. There is an element of trust. I mean, that's your hand on a sharp object here.
Definitely. So when prisoners come up here, they will get to utilise like knives and stuff like that. It does build that trust up.
The addiction support for prisoners here is unconventional, potentially high risk. The Recovery Cafe is delivered by an outside charity, and it operates with one condition: no prison guards are allowed in the room. Why does it matter that you do this with no prison guards in the room?
If they openly discuss maybe using drugs or having violent thoughts, that can go against them, and they might not get parole or they might get in trouble.
Left alone with the inmates, we hear the majority have a familiar path: childhood in care or surrounded by violence and addiction, an adult life in and out of prison.
My name's Stephen Telford. I'm serving an 8-month sentence for assault and refusing a breath test. There's been times when I've hated myself, I've been disappointed, I've beat myself up. Now I'm in a place, probably through recovery group and sharing my experience, where I'm starting to enjoy my own company. I'm proud that I can say no to drugs.
One prisoner allowed to be left in the room with us has killed a man while at the height of his addiction. Coming here, he's been guided away from drugs and now chairs this support group to help others.
Through coming to places like this is where I've found the tools and the ways and means to keep going and to find another day clean.
Do you regret your addiction?
Of course, 100%.
Do you regret your crime?
100%. Every crime I've committed some horrible offences against people, and I live with that guilt every day. All I can say is sorry.
Spoiler light is going up past your calves, into your knees.
There is one problem we keep hearing again and again. Inmates can leave here drug-free, only to be housed in hostels, surrounded by drugs.
It's a fact, every time I get out of prison, I'm either homeless, on the streets, or in a hostel. And when you're in the environment, all you're around about is drink and drugs.
Is that where people relapse?
Oh, aye, definitely.
Is that where you've relapsed?
That's where I've relapsed, every single time.
Ultimately, this recovery programme inside Barlinnie can't force prisoners to make the right decisions. But the Governor says his mission here is giving people ways to cope with what awaits them on the outside.
It's a difficult world to be in, particularly people who don't have either the literacy or the social skills or the ability or the confidence or self-esteem.
Do you think that as a society we are failing some people?
We are seeing early morbidity in young adult males. Then we must be failing. Somewhere we must be.
Too many are still stuck in that revolving door of addiction and crime, and it only takes them one of two ways: back behind bars or to an early grave.
Peter, an incredibly revealing report in which you uncovered some plainly shocking truths.
Yeah, and there is a cost to keeping people trapped in that cycle of addiction, crime, incarceration. And it's a cost that can be measured, Rageh, in brass tacks. It's £35,000 per year per prisoner. So there is a benefit to you and me in the community here if we can break people out of that revolving door of crime and addiction, get them drug-free, get them crime-free. Unfortunately, as we've heard, that when the good work is done and they leave prison drug-free, they're then sent to hostels surrounded by drugs and alcohol, in many ways being set up to fail. I put it directly to Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon: can we do better?
if you're going to sit here and expect me to say, no, we can't do better and all of this thing, you're going to be disappointed. We haven't got it right in every respect on drugs, which is why we've got the scandal of drugs death being at the level they are. One of the issues, and it's one of many issues, so it's not the only one, is that you're outlining of people coming out of prison.
You've acknowledged your government's failures in the drug death crisis. Do you acknowledge that one of those failures is a lack of safe accommodation, safe and appropriate accommodation for vulnerable people who are trying to recover from addiction?
Yes, one of the things that we've got to do more, and one of the things we are seeking to invest more in are the services that are there for vulnerable people.
It's often said that you can judge a society by how it treats its most vulnerable citizens. The people we're speaking to, many of them abused as children, many of them raised in care, in and out of prison their entire adult lives. It's no coincidence that Scotland has one of the highest rates of incarceration in Europe and the highest rate of drug deaths. When we put this evidence to Nicola Sturgeon, she says Scotland can do better. I think Scotland must do better.
OK, Peter, in Glasgow, thank you very much indeed. And you can see a fuller version of Peter's exclusive report on our website. The debate over whether 12 to 15-year-olds should be vaccinated against coronavirus has been settled, finally, in the House of Commons this evening. The government is backing the recommendation of the chief medical officers of all 4 home nations who agree that being vaccinated will help safeguard pupils' education and mental health. They are being offered 1 dose of the Pfizer vaccine. The first jabs could begin as soon as next week.
And please remember also about the articles we run, so it's going to...
This is how it should be. Children in school being taught by a teacher in person. For months, the pandemic has put a stop to this, and the impact on pupils' mental health and education was so great, it's led to this.
Our view was the benefit exceeded the risk to a sufficient degree that we are recommending to our ministers in all 4 nations that they make a universal offer, and I want to stress the word offer, of vaccination to children 12 to 15.
But just 10 days ago, the body that advises the government on vaccines, the JCVI, said it wouldn't recommend jabs on health grounds alone. The benefits, they concluded, were just too marginal.
How are you and your colleagues and doctors and nurses on the ground going to convince parents to vaccinate their children, given that they now know that it only offers marginal health benefits?
But we need to remember that education is very important in public health terms. Education is vitally important for individual children, our children.
That has been really critical in our decision making, and this is true whether we're talking about individuals' physical health, individuals' mental health, or the long-term effects that a disrupted education can have on people's life chances. So that's very much where a lot of our discussion lay.
Tonight, the government accepted the 4 top doctors' advice, and jabs will begin next week.
We will now move with the same sense of urgency we've had at every point in our vaccination programme. We will follow that advice and continue on that vital path that is making more and more people in this country safer.
At this school in Croydon, these Year 10 pupils will all now be offered a jab, but will they take it up?
I think it would be very beneficial for me, seeing as a lot of my family members have some sort of ongoing illness.
Majority of my family have had it, and there's been no side effects, and I feel like as a family, because I'm quite a family-oriented person, we like to gatherings, and we've struggled a lot this and last year not seeing each other.
I feel like everyone, I'm leaning towards the side of getting it, but still a bit like shaky.
Parents on the Wirral earlier had similar views.
I don't think it's been tested enough. If it's being offered, then we're going to take it.
I would basically leave it up to her to decide.
Around 3 million children will now be offered 1 dose of the Pfizer vaccine. Just how many will take up the offer is the big question.
And Emily and Romilly are both here. And first to you, Emily, how hard will it be to convince families to go ahead with it? And speaking as a parent of a 15-year-old, who has the final say?
Well, I think, look, it's not going to be easy to convince them because it isn't straightforward, and it hasn't been helped, I think, by the mixed messages, really, which has put parents in a really difficult position. Last week, about 10 days ago, they were told that the health benefits were so small that it simply wasn't going to be beneficial to vaccinate their children and therefore wasn't going to happen. Now the chief medical officers are saying that once you take into account the benefits of keeping schools open, then, you know, there is a benefit and they should be vaccinated. So the message from the government that they're going to have to get across to parents really clearly is that disrupting education has such a big impact on their mental and emotional well-being that vaccinating is now going to be necessary. And Professor Whitty says it's not a must, but that it is a should, and that is how they'll be recommending it. Now, you ask about the final say. That is also complicated, but as with any other vaccine or medical procedure for the under 16s, parents will be asked their consent. If there is a disagreement and a doctor deems the child to be competent enough, intelligent enough to understand the risks versus the benefits, then that child can override the parents. And I think, given that the really finely balanced risks versus the benefits with this, we might see more disagreements between parents and children than usual.
For sure, it's a thorny but really important issue. Romilly, in terms of the government's wider plans for COVID as we approach the autumn and then the winter, they're going to lay out their stall in terms of how we counter that in tomorrow, I see. What can we expect?
Yeah, they are, and very much linked to what Emily was saying about vaccinating children. The heart of this winter plan is going to be about extending and strengthening the vaccine programme. So the Prime Minister already said today that the booster programme will be going ahead, and I've had it confirmed that it will be offered to the over 50s and it will be given at 6 months after the second jab was administered. And along with that, there's also going to be a significant push to try to get all those who haven't already been double jabbed, and that is 20% of the over 16s, to get on and do it. Alongside that, there's going to be a reminder about getting a flu jab, the importance of that, because there is real fear in the NHS, and I'm sure you've heard this too, Emily, about just how bad seasonal flu could be this year and how much pressure that could put on the NHS. Chris Whitty warned in his press conference today that people who think the dangers of COVID have passed have not understood where we are going. And that's why the Prime Minister, who will be giving a press conference in the afternoon after the Health Secretary has given a statement to the Commons, will be talking about the measures that might have to be called on, such as return to mask wearing or a return to working from home if the NHS does come under a significant strain. OK,
thank you very much indeed, Romilly and Emily, to both of you. Now, in the past hour in a New York court, a first short hearing was held about the civil lawsuit brought against Prince Andrew by Virginia Giuffre. The judge suggested to the American lawyer hired by Prince Andrew that claiming not to have been served with her documents isn't going to work in his court. The judge said sooner or later it will happen. Miss Giuffre claims that she was sexually assaulted by the prince when she was 17, claims Prince Andrew firmly denies.
Since Prince Andrew's accuser, Virginia Giuffre, announced she was suing him in August, we have heard neither from the royal nor his lawyers. In the past hour, that changed. It happened at this courthouse in New York, a procedural hearing perhaps, but one given much more prominence because the sexual assault charges under discussion involved the Queen's second son. The Duke of York was newly represented by a high-profile Hollywood lawyer, Andrew Brettler. He appeared to contest the service of process, in other words, the serving of papers on Prince Andrew, a technical argument which could slow the case down. Mr. Brettler told the court, "We believe that this is a baseless, non-viable and potentially unlawful lawsuit."
He's lawyering up. They're making every possible technical argument. I have been up against Andrew Brettler in many of my cases. He represents a lot of these guys who are high-profile guys accused of sexual misconduct. So I'm sure that's what's going to happen.
Last week we learned that the papers for the lawsuit were handed in at the gates of the Duke of York's official residence in Windsor. A police officer took them and said they would be passed to the Prince's legal team. But in court, Judge Lewis Kaplan noticed the significance of the Prince's position. "I have a foreign national," he said, "who is being sued in the United States courts, and he has taken the position that he hasn't been served." Prince Andrew was in Balmoral as the court sat tonight. He's staying there with the Queen and even went out shooting on Friday, which many might argue is not a great look for a man facing such serious allegations. They are allegations the Prince has always denied, and he previously said he never recalled meeting Virginia Giuffre. But whatever the delay tonight, US lawyers believe the Prince will be served and the case will progress.
Prince Andrew's attorneys are properly asserting a bad service position. You have to, because they need to buy time. And buying time right now is what Prince Andrew needs. But he will get served. Even if it's not tonight, he's going to get served.
Prince Andrew now has a high-profile lawyer who will do his best to defend his client. But Virginia Giuffre's legal team now has a much more direct way to reach the Prince. Chris Ship, News at 10.
And Emma is outside the court in New York. Emma, it was a swift hearing, wasn't it?
Indeed so, 30 minutes all up, Rageh, but it was an opportunity for these lawyers to try and make their case. It was certainly an opportunity for Prince Andrew's legal team to say what they felt about it. Basically, as Chris reported there, that it was a baseless, unviable and potentially unlawful case based on the fact that they say there is this secret document, a settlement agreement signed by Virginia Giuffre back in the time that she was trying to prosecute Jeffrey Epstein. And they say that that document basically renders all liability against Prince Andrew null and void. That wasn't something that Judge Kaplan was willing to take on board. He said that was not the issue at hand today. He went on to discuss whether or not the service of these documents had been done properly. The legal team for Virginia Giuffre says yes, they had been. They'd been left at his last known address. They'd been posted by Royal Mail to that address. But Prince Andrew's team said no, that wasn't the case. Of course, it's going to be a lot easier for those documents to be served now that there is a lawyer who is standing up saying that he is representing the Duke. He, therefore, can take those documents and they will be considered served.
OK, that'll run. Thank you very much indeed, Emma. Now, everyone knows the sooner cancer is detected, the greater the chance of surviving it. So, a lot of hope is pinned on a new, potentially revolutionary test being able to identify one of 50 different cancers before symptoms start to show. Trials have already started in Runcorn in Cheshire. 140,000 other over 50s in England will be invited to take part. The scheme will take at least 2 years to come up with results, but if it does what it's supposed to, it could save thousands of lives in the UK every year. After a highly charged arguments over government plans to withdraw the 20... Now, after taking the summer to think about it, the face and the one of the founders of GB News, Andrew Neil, has decided he doesn't want to be its chairman anymore, nor its main presenter. That didn't stop him appearing on the channel this evening on Nigel Farage's programme.
It's a change of role here at GB News, and I've no doubt you can read plenty about that, but Andrew Neil is here as a GB News contributor and commentator. And
Andrew Neil, former editor of the Sunday Times and ex-BBC political interviewer, said in a statement, "I am sorry to go, but I have concluded it's time to reduce my commitments." The trappings of Emma Raducanu's new superstar status were all around her today, from the moment she woke up until late into the night. First thing, she was on not one but two of America's breakfast shows, explaining, amongst other things, how her parents have always been her toughest critics, but finally she'd impressed them. Then, during sightseeing, she spotted herself on a giant billboard, and tonight her Cinderella story continued when she was allowed to go to the ball. New York's famous Met Gala ball, that is.
There she is. Hello there. Love that smile.
We're so thrilled to be joined right now by Emma Raducanu.
A small taste of a new and very different lifestyle. On America's breakfast shows, Emma Raducanu spoke about everything from how she'd spent her winnings to her parents, who've helped turn a supreme talent into a Grand Slam champion.
Yeah, they were pretty tough on me when I was young, but it kind of shaped the way, and I think now it's helping on the biggest stages in the world, on Arthur Ashe Stadium, when you really need it. They were just so happy and proud of me, and they're my toughest critics and very, very hard to please, but yeah, I got them with this one. They couldn't resist.
Saturday's astonishing success brings dollars, many millions of them, but also enormous expectation. Pressure she'll need protecting from. Andy Murray has trained with and played against Raducanu. Tonight, he was full of admiration for her US Open triumph.
she's obviously really, really good. But yeah, what she did in New York was very special, and yeah, it's a huge boost for British tennis.
While the challenge for Raducanu's team is to manage her future, a future that looks very different to the one they'd mapped out just a few weeks ago, the priority for those who run the game here is to maximise the potential that her stunning rise to Grand Slam champion has gifted them. Raducanu appeals to a young demographic and has a girl-next-door relatability about her.
I did play quite a bit, but it's making me want to play tennis a lot more. She was amazing, and I can't believe that she won the whole thing.
The Lawn Tennis Association knows it simply can't miss out on this chance to grow the game.
And actually over the last 2 years, we've been seeing participation grow at each different level. And that's something that we hope we can boost even further now with Emma's support and Emma's success.
If she was struggling to grasp the scale of her achievement, spotting herself on a giant New York billboard this morning must have helped. And as long as she keeps winning and smiling that smile, there will be plenty more where that came from. Steve Scott, News at 10.
Amazing story. And finally, perhaps the clue was already in the title. The film Back to the Future is back as a musical. The star of the original movie, Michael J. Fox, has been talking exclusively to us about how he always thought it would make a good musical. On the subject of the future, he wants to defy Parkinson's disease and live for another 60 years.
When they first decided to turn the film into a musical, they couldn't have guessed it would take so long, nor that there would be a virus called COVID-19.
Great Scott!
That tonight...
This is my time machine.
A time machine? Back to the Future, though, is back, and the show goes on.
What's this? What's this?
In the hit 1985 film, Marty McFly, played by Michael J. Fox, goes back in time to 1955 and has to try and change the future. Just 6 years after the film, its star would be diagnosed with Parkinson's, a degenerative brain disease that affects movement. He is sad he's been unable to attend the musical's opening.
I really was looking forward to being in London at this time, but it's just the world won't allow it.
What did Marty McFly do for you?
When you do a film that's that big and it's that widely accepted, it's a whole different. Your life takes a big change, so it took some getting used to. But Marty just like the fact that people now have tattoos of him on their legs and it's a big part of my life.
The musical has the same creative team as the film. Its writer unapologetic that the stage project has taken him 16 years.
The idea of doing a mediocre version of Back to the Future as a stage musical, the way some movies and stage musicals have turned out, that was never going to fly.
Fox's co-star Christopher Lloyd says the film has bonded them forever.
It's always a wonderful reunion. It's a celebration. And he's just so wonderful to be around.
Like his famous film character, Michael J. Fox, through his Parkinson's Foundation, is intent on changing the future too. The speed with which a COVID vaccine was found has given him hope.
When the smartest people in the world get together and say, we're going to get this done, to get it done. They get the vaccine, and it was so quick. I usually do these focus commando raids on it, just like go at it.
He may never act again, but it has proved a joy to be reminded of that film.
At Christmas time, we were in our house, and the TV was on, and I looked up and Back to the Future was on. And I hadn't seen it since like 1987. Came in and said, "You're watching Back to the Future?" And I said, "I haven't seen it in years." And I said, "I'm pretty good in this."
From the past to the future, they'll be hoping the movie's new stage life will have the same impact. Nina Nanar, News at 10.
Part of my childhood. And that's it for tonight from me and everyone on the programme. Good night.